What do you do when you find yourself as the parents of an empty nest household? Well, if you're like our next guest, you go on an epic sailing adventure and then you write a memoir about it. Here with her book, Uncharted, is authored Kim Brown-Seeley. It's so good to meet you.
It's so nice to meet you.
You are super brave. Tell us a little bit about empty nesting. That is a major life event, even though you know it's coming.
It is a major life event, and I have to say, I knew it was coming, and yet it completely struck me by surprise. And it felt to me like this profound transformation, that it's a specific thing, but it affects every family.
Right, if there's your family all together.
There we are. And to me, it felt like you're going from this very intimate, sort of hands-on parenting that it's taken you 18 years to figure out how to do to raise this successful human and push them gently out the door. It sort of felt to me like the longest breakup of my life, right?
It is, and you still love your kids so much and crave their company, and yet the positive responsible thing to do is to let them go and step back. So it's a hard thing. What I love about what you guys did is say, let's take on another big hard thing.
Well, we may have been incredibly naive. I felt that it would be a good time to have some sort of a family project, or specifically then a project for my husband and myself once our boys left, something to sort of distract us from how lonely I thought we'd feel without them in our midst.
It's a good plan.
And I do recommend it still having some sort of a project, something to do. You'll have this sort of opening in your life, and to think about it and be intentional. I think our trip was probably a little overambitious. We survived, but it was hard.
So tell everybody what you did.
So this was during the recession, and we found this used boat that was an incredible deal at the time. You couldn't give sailboats away during the recession.
There it is.
And it took a lot of work to get it back in that shape. And we then decided to, as a family, we learned how to sail it. And then my husband and I took off on a 700 nautical mile, that was one direction, sailing adventure north up the Inside Passage to the Great Bear Rainforest, which is just the most extraordinary place. And I had read about it, and as a journalist, I was fascinated by this place that just sounded like it had so much mystery and the sort of magical quality. And also, it's the last surviving temperate coastal rainforest on the planet, which I couldn't believe we have that right here, so close to Seattle in our backyard.
And that you could get to it in your boat. You saw these amazing things. This is not, without some danger. Boating has lots of things that can go wrong. You're in you're on a boat with your significant other, which is 24/7 for the most part. What were some of the challenges that you might not have expected? Because I'm sure you prepared well.
We were incredibly prepared in terms of provisions, and this part of the rainforest that there are no stores, you need to be provisioned for at least a month. And yet what I think was hard to prepare for was realizing when you're so far away from any other boats, your friends, your family, there was no cell service on that part of the coast for 8 or 9 days. We just dropped our youngest son off at college. The lack of cell was a total shock. I didn't realize that. So I don't think I ever could have prepared for that. But we survived. I think what was hard though was just the mental strain, the kind of endurance it takes for a trip like that. And yet I think it's a great test for a couple, and you really have to dig deep, right? And realize, if you have a hard day, how do you survive that? You don't have a choice. You can't just get off and jump in your car and say, I'm going to,
I'll go to the 7-Eleven for a few minutes.
I'm going to get a coffee here, right?
Absolutely. And I think it comes through that there's a strength and a rebonding that happens between you and your husband. And maybe it doesn't have to be as dramatic a trip as this, but that idea of finding out who you are again in that way, not as a everyday hands-on mom and dad, is a pretty important part of this stage of life.
Thank you. I agree. I think at first it was an intensely sort of hard time for the two of us. We had no idea how it would feel physically, suddenly not having our boys between us. We were a family who, our favorite thing was pretty much to have dinner together every night, just a simple meal. And now there were only two of us. It felt so different. And yet, as the trip went on, it was a transformative experience, and you realize that there's a whole new life for yourselves as a couple if you can grab some sort of grab that freedom, and it's a chance to to really become reacquainted after 20 some years.
Exactly.
So.
And you mentioned the word intentional, which I think is a super important thing to keep in mind. Tell us about the Great Bear Rainforest, because that became this super special place for you.
Right. Well, for me, it just grabbed me. It's an area that's about the size of Switzerland. Mm-hmm. It's the coastline of the northern BC coast, so it's everything from just above Vancouver Island to just south of Alaska. And it rains a lot because it's a rainforest, so it might not be for everyone, but it has this incredible biodiversity. And so for me, with the background as a journalist, it had everything. It had this sort of sense of mystery. It has these very, very rich ancient indigenous cultures, groups of First Nations people that have lived there for thousands of years, and so that was for both of us really interesting to spend more time there and learn about it. And then these incredible animals, beautiful humpback whales that would be breaching beside the boat, orca whales.
It's so inspiring.
Bears.
And it can be used as a metaphor for any kind of discovery we want as empty nesters. We'll be right back. Thank you so much.